Okay, next we want to talk about sort of the understanding of the Lord. And to do this, we're going to have to, there's a mathematician and philosopher named Rene Descartes that was trying to merge the concept of mind and body. And what we have today is the Cartesian coordinate system from his work. And anybody that studied algebra will understand that this is sort of the XY axis, right? So we have the y-axis and the x-axis. The y-axis is sort of the, the imaginary, and the x is the real. So we're thinking sort of body and mind the same way, just like male to female. We're kind of thinking of this similarly. And we know that when we're actually putting together a coordinate, this is a coordinate system. So if we have a point that's in this quadrant versus this one, or this one, we know that it's always going to be a certain set, right? So we know that we're going to call each one of these axes, we're going to give a positive and a negative side, right? A male or a female. X-axis would be positive above, negative below. So this creates four quadrants. We have a positive, positive, and we have a positive, negative. We have a negative, positive, and we have a negative, negative. So, and of course, that's the origin point here. So yeah, we got this coordinate system right here where we have these potentials for positive, positive, negative, negative, and then two neutral quadrants. And one thing that we want to think about in creation is the idea of sort of day one, day two creation. So again, we're going to think of negative as blue, red as positive. So we're told day one of creation, you're splitting up the potential of day from night. So we're talking metaphysical here. It's spoken into existence, light is, right? So you have, not only is it let there be light spoken in, you have the breath too. So you have heat. The heat of the breath and all of, right, sound, radiation, light, metaphysical. So you're dividing this idea of night from day. And just as in magnetism here, you have a plane of inertia and you have two poles that are going to be separating this out into different sides of the coin, so to speak. But you're told the Y, the male, it starts with the division of night from day. And then on day two, just as you're told in the story of Adam and Eve, Adam has to lay down, and then from his side, from his rib, is taken the expanse, right? It's taken the expanse of Eve. So what you get there is you got to remember that you're still dividing day from night, the potentials. But then in day two, it's telling you we're dividing the waters above from the waters below. So what you can do here is just kind of, I just created a compact disc here because you're going to have this void space, right? Because you got to think of this magnetodielectric relationship as counter space and space simultaneously, right? So what we think of matter is something solid. It's counter space. And the obverse, or the equal and opposite reaction to this gravity or counter space, it's bringing solid matter in together, right, is going to be the space around it that it creates. So we're dividing night from day on the metaphysical plane. On the physical plane, right, matter, pattern and matter, right, father and mother, Adam and Eve. So now we're creating a sort of this coordinate, this cross, and we understand that this positive to positive creates the potential for, right, sort of like what you would get for the sun, negative, negative. This would be the dielectric overlay that you would get for the moon. And so you have this potential now in neutral quadrants, right? So you have the cloud of day that's being pinged sort of in your stratified, right? Your stratosphere. You got all this different elements that we understand from the periodic chart. And some of those elements are noble gases, right? They're inert, sort of like a neon, just a neon sign that you see in the bar, right? It's got the potential to illuminate. It gets, what do you call it, ionized. And ping, it gets pinged, so you get a big blue, potential big blue cloud here, the cloud of day. And obviously you're going to have hydrogen way up here at the top, and it's being shielded by a layer of helium, which is also going to be pinging. That's inert gas. And just like MIG welding, you're going to have a, right, to keep it from smoking and popping, your welder, your flash, right? You got to have it shielded by that inert gas up there. So think of how that's stratifying out in layers of the open firmament, right? And all of this matter being sort of stratified out by this action. But the compressive action, like gravity, like Newton's telling us, we have this idea of gravity bringing everything down, but it has an equal and opposite reaction. It's throwing the light up, and it's creating layers in the medium of the water. And so just think of that note up here as the sun being pinged, the cloud of day, right? And then as soon as you lose the potential for that, you cross this plane of inertia, that double-edged sword, you're into your nighttime. So something has to stop the day, the illumination of day. And I just think that, obviously, just like here, phi to 1, the upper side is moving a little faster than the bottom side. So over time, this curtain, or this double-edged sword, is going to be phasing this dielectric overlay that you're going to get on this side to get your moon. But anyway, the Cartesian coordinate system right here is how you begin to understand that. Now, recall that phi to 1 is the imbalance from side to side on our magnetodielectric. And we know that, like, the fine structure constant is essentially phi squared over 360, right? And you could see how we're going to get phi squared by having phi to 1 and phi to 1 here. So essentially this is going to be phi squared to 1 in this quadrant. This would be 1 over phi squared, right? Phi squared over 1. And then these would be neutral. So you see how this is important. Phi, of course, is discovered in the late 1800s in the numerical system, right? We're going to start adding numbers together. So the first 1 and 1, 2, right? The Fibonacci sequence. 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, 233, 377, 610, 987 would be all of your Fibonacci numbers. And of course, they correlate to a Lucas number. If you multiply all of these by the square root of 5, for instance, like 144 would be 322. 233, 521, 843, so on and so forth, right? What's 899 is 199. 123, yeah, so on and so forth. Anyway, Lucas and Fibonacci identities. It's important. These are all going to show up in your numbers, in your book of numbers later on. But right here, sort of understanding this Cartesian cross is paramount, right? Because this is going to be how you're going to understand the Lord and how you're creating the potential for a sun here, right? And how you're creating the potential for a moon from this quadrant, and how you must be getting a sort of void space, an aperture, for you to be able to see this sort of dielectric overlay down here in your neutral nighttime, or even not at night, right? Just whenever it's going to show up, even during the day, you'd be able to see it, right? But the potential for that's going to be in the waters below, which we can't praise, we can't appreciate it fully. Now, one thing you'll find out about the moon there is going to be the map, right? So we cartograph the Earth like a polar projection, and you'll see that like all of those are going to show up in the moon. So say you have your moon here, and this has a shadow terminator line right here. And you know that if you invert this upside down, you flip it, you're going to get all of the what do you call it? The continental the spaces, right, are going to be darkened in here. And you're going to see all that. But if you were to index this 90 degrees and then rotate this up 23.5 degrees, you'll see that all of those continental features, you know, that you find them in that section of the moon right there. And this is where you got to understand that the Lord is seen sort of face to face and mouth to mouth. So, like I said, I haven't figured out how all this works. There's going to have to be other people that are smart and well versed in mathematics and physics and everything else in the scriptures, which I'm pretty weak on. But it's pretty evident to me that all of it's packed into those numbers, right? It's packed into the scriptures. If you look at the other videos I have on understanding the biblical numbers, you'll understand how phi is it's all over the place in those numbers, phi squared particularly, and how you're getting this sort of 23.5 degrees in Judah South and everything else. So it's in there. It's just whether or not people are going to be, I don't know, mature enough and sophisticated enough to draw it all out. But at any rate, you know, hopefully this demonstrates or helps people maybe understand the waters, how to get the water from the rock. I think this was pretty interesting. I haven't seen anybody else explain the musical notation like this or the origins of this. But to me, it makes sense if you tie it into magnetism. What we see of the Pharaoh cell from Ken Wheeler's work, 7-part series, and you need to project how that works with the Lord, right? And then you can better understand creation and how we're going to have a sort of plane happening here, how we're getting the moon, right? How we're getting the sun. And then understanding how we're being shown all of this in the moon itself. And the 23.5 degrees is showing up in the numbers. It's just, there's a lot of meat left on that bone for people to try and figure out. Even the analemma, right? The sun analemma, as we know, right? This 23.5 degrees right here is equivalent to phi squared times 9. Okay, we know that on the crossing of this analemma, if we have this is the equator, we know that crossing happens at 9 degrees north, right? So we know that 23.5 degrees is going to be here, and that's phi squared times 9. So this is giving us proportions, essentially, of from the equator to the crossing is 1. From the crossing to here is going to be phi. Phi plus 1 is the same as phi squared. So, right, we have phi squared from the equator to the limit of our analemma. And that, of course, means that from the crossing to this side is phi squared plus 1, which is equal to the square root of 5 times phi, right? So definitely square root of 5 is pivotal. Like I said, we haven't discovered this until later on in the 1800s. So to see all this in the scripture well before everything should give people peace of mind as far as to what truth is. But people have to be, they've got to be mature. They've got to be, they can't be too blinded by passion and pride. And that's Proverbs 16:18. 1.618, that's the number for growth.